This is my mission control. 5 agents, real-time, self-hosted. You've probably seen people run multiple Hermes agents, or an AgentOS. Today, we'll build the simple version with a 5-agent crew on Telegram and Discord, plus a live dashboard that you can access on all of your devices. And you can build along with me because the whole build is 29 copy-paste prompts from the free guide in the description. You can even customize it for your use case and your workflow and to see the information that matters to you. Okay, enough talking. Now, let's build it. Let's get started. Now, this is a long video, so I want to start by showing you this. This is a completely free guide that I put together that you can follow along with the video for every single step, including all of the prompts, all of the links, everything that you need is in here. So take a look at that in the description, and that way it's going to be easier for you to follow along with all of the steps. Let's quickly talk through the prerequisites. We're going to be doing this on a VPS because it's a system that's always running and accessible across all our devices, so having it in the cloud makes sense. You will need a Discord account and a Telegram account, as well as some sort of an API key for the AI model. You can do this using Mac, Linux, Windows, everything's fair game. And knowing some basic Linux commands is helpful, but everything that you need should be in this guide. So the first step is getting a VPS. If you already have one, go ahead and use that. If you don't, I've personally used both Contabo and Racknerd. Both of them will work just fine for this guide. You're going to want something that has at least 4 gigs of RAM. Racknerd is a good budget option, and they often have deals running on their site, so you can take a look at those. But I'll show you how to set this up using Contabo because they have really good specs for the price they're offering. Here you can look at all cloud VPSs, and here you can choose the server that makes sense for you. I'd recommend going with the default one because it's really good value for $6 a month, but if you need to downgrade that, something with 8 gigs of RAM will be more than enough. I'm going to select the 12 gigs of RAM and click Get Started. Here you can choose your term. I'm going with 12 months. And the region, free EU region, works just fine. I'm going to go with the default storage. You can get faster storage, but it's lower capacity. And we're going to go with Ubuntu and select version 24. Now, if you haven't really used these servers before, getting the backup option is a good idea. I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to go with no data protection. And it's going to give us an IP address for free. This is where you set your password. Just make sure you save it because we're going to need this for later steps. Click Next. Fill out your personal information, click Next, and then it's going to take you to the payment and confirmation stage. And when you're done, you'll get an email with your server IP address and login details. If you end up going with Racknerd, you'll get an email that looks like this, and it'll also have the IP address, username, and password. Please just use the links in the description because it won't cost you anything extra, and it's going to help the channel out. Now that you have your VPS, let's go ahead and actually log in. So to do that, if you're on Mac, open Terminal, or if you're on Windows, you can open PowerShell by searching in the Start menu. I'm just going to open a terminal window here, and once you're in your terminal, you can follow the guide for the login command, which is SSH, which is a secure way to connect to your remote server. So just type in SSH, your username, which is most likely root, and then your IP address. From the email, hit enter. Because we haven't connected to this machine before, it's going to ask you if you trust this machine. I'm going to type in yes to allow it to connect. It's not going to ask me that next time. Now it's asking for the root password. If you're using Contabo, you set this up when you were signing up. I'm using Racknerd for this specific instance, so I'm just going to type that in. And boom, we're logged in. Here you can see that there's already updates that can be applied. So we're going to run this next command here, and this is going to update our system and install curl, which we're going to need for Hermes. So just paste that in, and it's going to go through and update your system. And it's asking me if I want to keep the current SSH config file. I'm going to keep the local version. This is basically like updating Windows when you get a new computer, but it's a lot less painful. Okay, great. So our system's all updated and ready to go. I'm just going to clear my screen. Now let's install Hermes Agent. To do that, we need the single command, and you can find that on the guide here. Just type that command in, and it's going to download and install all of the dependencies and everything that Hermes needs. Here you can see it's downloading all of these skills, and it's setting up browser tools. And when it's done, it's just going to start the setup wizard for you. If that didn't automatically launch for you, you can type in Hermes Setup, and that'll start the process as well. We are going to go through with the full setup, so you can just use your arrow keys to navigate and hit enter. Now it's asking us which provider we want to use for the AI models. Now, one thing I will mention here that's important, we are going to be building a fairly complex system. So it's important to use a frontier model. Anything like ChatGPT 5.5, Claude Opus, or DeepSeek Pro will help. I'm going to use DeepSeek Pro so I can track my token usage. You can see before we started in DeepSeek, my balance here is $1.66. And at the end, we'll check in on how much it actually used. So stick around for that. Now, you can use a smaller model, but just know that you will probably spend a lot of time fixing bugs. One way around that is to break your prompt down into smaller steps. So that way you're not giving it more than it can handle. So I'm going to set it up using DeepSeek, but you can use like your Codex subscription, your Claude subscription. It supports so many providers out of the gate that really it's up to you. And whatever you use, it's either going to generate a login link for you, or it's going to ask you for the API key. So I have my key. I'm just going to paste it into the terminal, and I'll just hit enter to accept the base URL. And I'm going to set it up using the Flash model, which is less powerful. But down the road, when I give it a little bit more to do, I will switch it to the Pro model. For the backend, you can go ahead and keep local. Then it asks you to select the platform that you want to use to talk to it. We're going to set it up using Telegram, and then later we're going to come in here and turn on Discord as well. So just scroll through this menu here, and then hit space to toggle the option, and then hit enter. Now, this is a new update. It's asking if I can scan a QR code and confirm in Telegram, or I can message BotFather and generate the token manually. So I'll just show you how to do it with the BotFather method. So in your Telegram, you can just search for BotFather and open it. I already have my token set up, but if you wanted a new bot, you just type in /new bot. It's going to ask you for a name. So select a name that ends with bot. So let's try Hermes AgentOS bot. And that's taken. So just play around with this and find something that works for you. And then once you have the name locked in, it's going to give you the token here. And you can just copy that token by clicking on it, and you'll see that it copied to the clipboard. I'm going to go back to my terminal and say that I do want the manual setup. I'm going to paste in my bot token. And now it's going to ask for allowed user IDs. It's a good idea to set this up because right now anyone can message that bot and get a response, but we want to lock it down so it only talks to us. So to do that, you need your own user ID, which you can get from user info bot. So you can find that just by searching for it on Telegram. And then here, if you just type /start, it's going to reply to you with your ID that if you click, it'll copy again. Let's paste that ID back into the terminal. And it's asking you if you want to set up a home channel. So this is basically where the bot will exclusively monitor and respond to you. And I will say, yes, I do want to set this as the home channel. And yes, we do want to install the gateway as a background service. So we're going to say yes to that. Now it's asking if we want it to be a user service or a system service. I am going to run this as a system service, but either option is fine. We are going to start that service now. It's going to ask you to set up the tools that you want to set up. You can scroll through this and hit space to enable anything else you kind of want to see as well. I am going to turn off computer use because this is a Linux system, not a Mac system, so it doesn't need that. Now, if you have subscriptions for browser use, you can set that up here. I'm going to stick with the local browser, and I am going to skip, and I'm going to skip this as well. For search provider, if you have API keys here, you can set that up. But you can also set up DuckDuckGo, which is free. Now it's asking us to do the same thing for Telegram. So I'll do the same thing here and turn off computer use. Again, we're going to stick with local browser. For image generation, if you have subscriptions for OpenAI or other services, you can set that up here. I'm going to skip this. And then for text-to-speech, I'm going to stick with the default. I'm going to skip this again. We're still going to stick with DuckDuckGo. Great, it's ready to go. We're just going to do a quick test on this by running Hermes TUI. Let's go into Hermes TUI. I like using TUI because it does give you a better experience than just the default terminal. And now we're in Hermes. And here we can type in anything just to make sure it's working. Hi, are you up? Hermes is up and ready to go. Now, if that didn't work for you, you can type in Hermes Setup and try going through it again, making sure your API keys are correct. And if something else is broken, you can type in Hermes Doctor, and it's going to run a diagnostics to help you figure out what's going on. Let's also just make sure we can talk to it on Telegram. So you can click the bot name here and just test out whether that works. It received the message, it's typing a response, and that was pretty quick. Great. So we have Hermes set up. We can talk to it via Telegram. Now let's go ahead and move on to actually building the system. So first, we're going to set up the main orchestrator, and then we're going to build out the crew of all the sub-agents. Let me talk a little bit about how we're going to do this. Hermes has a feature called profiles, which lets each agent own their own process, but there are some limitations with this. So we're not going to use the profile setup. We talked about using high-quality models for this. And lastly, with any changes that AI makes, there's possibilities that it's going to break stuff. So we want to try and be diligent about the backups. We don't need to worry about it yet, but when we get to building the dashboard, that's where we're going to implement this. And if you come to the guide here, you'll see there's a whole range of prompts you can copy paste. In terms of how to use these prompts, agents get less effective the larger their context window grows. They start to hallucinate. What I've found works well is to start a new session with each of the build phases, and I'll show you how to do that. And that brings us back to the orchestrator. For the orchestrator, first we want to set up its core identity. We want to tell it who it is. So prompt 1, which you can just copy from the website here, will tell the orchestrator who they are, and we'll tell them who you are. So you can just replace your name in this prompt. Let's go to Telegram. And like I said, we're going to start a new session. In Telegram, you do this with the /new command. It's going to ask you if you want to approve it. I will approve it once. It's going to tell me my model and the context window. I'll paste in the prompt and send it along. And you can see that it's actually updating its own memory. It's creating its own soul.md file, which is essentially the core of the agent identity. Now that that's done, let's ask it to set up some operating rules for itself. This will make sure it asks for approval, sets how to communicate with you, and also creates some delegation rules. You can feel free to customize this how you want it, but this generally works well for me. So I'll paste that in. And it's telling me that all 5 rules are locked in. And now it knows who I am. Phase 2 is for creating the other 4 agents. So we're going to set up a coder to do any development work, and then a writer, analyst, and marketer as well. The coder will handle all of our development tasks. The analyst is going to do all of the research and heavy lifting and web searches. He'll pass that on to the writer to create any content. And then eventually that's going to go to the marketer for distributing that. Now you can customize these for your own workflow. If you can think about how to break your workflow down into 2 or 3 or 4 discrete steps, then you can create agents for each of those steps and make sure they can talk to each other. Just watch the end first so that you have the complete picture of what we're doing here. So copy prompt 3, go back to Telegram, and then paste that in. And you can see in this prompt here, we're reminding it that these are different personas, not profiles. And it's giving me a architecture that it's going to create these workplace directories, and it's asking me if I approve. So I'm just going to remind it that it's fine as long as you're not using profiles. This is so that we don't run into roadblocks down the road. I've already done this before, and trust me, this keeps it simple and it works well. And it went ahead and created all of those agents, and it understands how delegation works. So it's finished with that. Let's move on to the next prompt, which is giving each of those agents memory and isolated workspaces. So let's paste that in and hit send. And you can see it's updating those skills and creating memories and boundaries. It's finished setting that up. And now we need to make sure they can talk to each other. So in phase 3, we're going to set up agent collaboration so that we can give them a general team awareness. With this prompt, it's going to be able to route requests to the correct agent. Let me talk about this really quickly while it came up. So every now and then, it's going to need to run commands that are sensitive, and it's always going to ask you for permission before running them. In this case, I trust this command because it's trying to look up its own Telegram bot tokens and understand its own gateway structure. So I'm going to allow it for this session. It's actually set up that routing table, and it's going to send anything with research or investigate to analyst, anything where we need to write something to the writer, anything we need to market to the marketer, and anything that we're building or implementing to the coder. We're also going to get it to build a shared team awareness. And it confirmed that all 4 of those skills are now active, and there's a handoff protocol for shared team awareness. The next prompt builds on that to build a full pipeline that involves the analyst, writer, and marketer all working together to build out content for a specific topic. So let's paste that in. Now, this prompt is important because it actually creates a usable pipeline using all of those agents working together to build something. And in this case, it's set up for writing blog posts, for creating content. But again, you can customize this to your use case. Okay, and you can see that it actually set up a content pipeline skill, which if we go to the new prompt, we can actually test out that new skill. So just for hygiene, I'm going to do this in a new session. So you can see our pipeline's working because it's actually dispatching the analyst and delegating tasks to each of those agents. So it's basically following this model. Great. And it gave me an entire research, post, and promotion plan. The point of this wasn't to actually get that post, but to test it. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, was to build it in pieces and validate things are working as we go. So you don't end up going through a lot of steps and then having to backtrace and figure out where things went wrong. So far, we're good. Everything works. We kind of have this setup going on where we can use Telegram to talk to the orchestrator, but we don't really have a lot of visibility with a lot of the sub-agents, and we don't understand what they're doing, which is where the next step comes in, which is to integrate with Discord and to give each of those agents its own channel so they can talk to them directly and delegate tasks to them in their own little world. We're now at phase 4. We're going to do the Discord integration. This is important because it gives us a way to talk to each of our bots without having to set up individual tokens for all of them. And to do this, we're going to first start by creating a Discord server. So go into your Discord app, and then if you scroll all the way down, you can add a new server. Really just create my own server, and just for me and my new friends. And you can just give this a name. I'm going to call this my AgentOS server and create it. You can see by default, you're going to get a bunch of channels. Let's just go ahead and delete all of that so we can set this up to how we want it. Now that our server is created, we're going to need to create some tokens and permissions. So you can go in to create a new application by using this link. You can just click New Application, AgentOS, and create it. Once you're here, go into the bot section on the left, and here you can reset the token. And it's going to ask you to verify. And once that's done, it's going to show you the token here that you can copy. And let's just save that in a safe space for now. Then if you scroll to the bottom of this page, there's a few different permissions that we're going to enable, which is the presence, the server member intent, and the message content intent. And this is going to enable it to tell you if it's typing something and manage your servers for you. Scroll down, and under bot permissions, make sure you select administrator and then save changes. So we've done all of that and we've cleaned our server. Now we need to make sure we can invite the new bot into the server. So go into the OAuth section here. And if you scroll down, you can generate a URL by selecting bot and then giving it administrator permissions. And it's going to generate a URL for you. So just paste that into a new tab. I'm just going to select the server that we just created and authorize it. There's no channels here, but if I create. Now, if I go back to my server, you can see that my bot has been added. So that's great. We're also just going to clean this up by deleting the channel so that Hermes can set it up how it needs to. And then for step 4, we're going to turn on developer mode and get a few IDs, including your user ID, the server ID, as well as the channel ID. Go into the Discord app, and here, if you click on your username, you can see it gives you an option to copy the user ID. Chances are you won't have this option, so go into user settings, developer, and make sure developer mode is turned on. And after that, you should be able to copy your user ID. So copy that and save it in a safe space. Next, we'll need the server ID here where you can see your server name. If you click on that, you can copy your server ID and again, save it in a safe space. Next, you're going to need the channel ID. So you can right click on any channel and copy it. We don't have any, so I'm going to create a brand new channel and then just call this orchestrator home and make sure that this is a private channel so only selected members will be able to see it. And here I will add in the Hermes agent and create the channel. Here I can see that both me and Hermes are in this channel, but the agent's offline, which we will fix in just a minute. But first, go into the settings, permissions, and then select your agent and make sure they have all of the permissions to actually manage and do everything that it needs to do, and save changes. Now on the channel name here, if you right click, copy the channel ID and save that again. We have all three. So the next step is to run Hermes Setup. So let's go back into the terminal and type in this command here, hit enter, and we're going to do the full setup again, but don't worry, it's actually going to be much quicker this time. So just hit enter, select whatever model provider you had. I already had DeepSeek, so I'm going to keep that. I already have a key here, so I'm going to keep that key. If you have a subscription, it's going to ask you if you want to maintain that, and you can just say yes. I'm going to stick with the same model, and then just hit enter to keep local. Now, this is where things change because we already have Telegram configured. We actually want to go down here and configure Discord. So you can toggle that by hitting space and then enter to confirm. So let's do that. It's asking us if we want to reconfigure Telegram, which we don't want to do. So I'm going to say no. And now it's going to ask us to configure Discord. So remember all of those tokens that you saved. We're going to paste those back in here. For allowed user IDs, this is important to make sure other people can't actually message your bot. So paste in your own user ID here. And for the home channel ID, we're going to type in the channel ID of the new channel that we just created. It's asking if you want to restart the gateway, which yes, we do. And that's going to let it connect to Discord and pick up all of those changes that we just made. After it restarts, it's going to ask you if you want to reset all of those tools. We don't need to do that, so you can just select escape to cancel. And here also just escape to cancel and do that a few times and keep going through those escapes. And the escapes essentially just keep all of the settings that we set up the first time. When you get to the Discord section, here you can go in and just select all of the same settings for Discord, which should be the same as before. And when that's done, it's going to tell you that, hey, the gateway is ready. If I come back to my Discord, I can see that my agent is online. Okay, so what have we built so far? So far, we can talk to the orchestrator using Telegram. The orchestrator and the agents can all talk amongst themselves. Now, we've added another channel, Discord. Discord's going to give us an advantage because we don't want a separate Telegram chat for all of it. And we can use Discord both from the phone and the laptop. And so far, we wired up Discord to the orchestrator. So we now have two different ways to talk to him, but we still can't talk to any of the other agents. So let's go fix that now. We're at prompt 9. And so this is going to the orchestrator, so I'll continue to use Telegram for that. We're going to give it the server ID and make sure that it can actually connect and talk to us. And before you send this prompt, just replace this part with your own server ID and hit send. And now it's trying to message me on Discord, so I'll just open that. Oh, there we go. And it just sent me a message here, so we know it can connect to Discord. Now let's make sure it has the right permissions on the Discord server. We'll just paste in the next prompt. And this is going to ask it to create a new channel, give me the channel name, and confirm that the permissions are actually set up correctly. And if I come to my Discord here, you can see that it actually created this new Hermes test channel and messaged me in here to confirm that the permissions are correct. So now that it can do that, we're going to get it to set up dedicated channels for all of the Discord bots. And to do that, I'll just paste in prompt 11 here. And this is going to clean up that test channel that it created. And it's going to create dedicated channels for the analyst, the writer, the marketer, and the coder. And if I come back to my Discord, I can see that it actually went ahead and created those 4 channels, and it deleted that test channel that we initially created. And it also sent me the IDs for all of those channels, which we're going to need for the next step. Now that the channels are there, we need to connect them to each of the agents. So in prompt 12, we're going to ask it to bind those channels with the agents. And here we're just asking it to connect each of those channels with the specific agents using those channel IDs. In this prompt, we're also going to just make sure everything works by going into each of those channels and asking the agent who they are, just to make sure that persistent personality works. And it's wired all of those in, and it's asking if it can restart the gateway, which I will allow. And that's because anytime any of these communication channels change, like Telegram or Discord or Slack, it helps to restart the gateway just to set up that connection again. And it just finished, and it said it can verify that all of those bindings are now in place. And now we can message each of these agents and see if that worked. So let's go ahead and message the analyst. It's already reacted to my message and is typing something. And he says he's the analyst. Okay, let's check with the writer. That's the writer, the marketer. That looks right. And lastly, our coder friend. There we go. Coder agent running on Hermes. Great. So we can consider prompt 12 complete. And now we have a way to talk to each of these agents directly from our Discord server. We can give them commands and specific directives, but how do we know what's actually happening behind the scenes? Because this still feels a bit like a black box. That is where logging comes in. We need a way for our agents to capture everything that they're doing so that we can then audit it and know exactly what happened at each stage. And we're going to do this using SQLite, which is a lightweight database, and it's not going to take up a lot of resources on your server. So go ahead and start a new session. Okay, and on to prompt 13. Oh, and by the way, this did take a really long time to build. So hey, if you can support me, I'd really appreciate it. But if not, that's cool too. So let's copy the prompt 13 and send it to the orchestrator. And we're going to ask it to create that database for us with all of the fields that we need, as well as scripts that the agents can use to write and read from that database. So it finished creating that database, but now we have to tell the agents to use it. So the orchestrator will now test it with all of the agents and let them know how to use it. So we'll paste in prompt 14. And this will create a logging policy that every agent needs to follow. And it's also going to run a test with all 5 agents to make sure they're using that policy. We can see it tested it with all of the agents. So we're all good. The next prompt is actually going to reinforce that, and it's going to create logging instructions for each of those agents to save those in their memory. So let's go ahead and paste that in. And you can see it's writing to memory. Okay, so it's good. We are writing to that database, but databases grow over time. And so we need a policy that goes in and cleans up that database. In this prompt, we're going to ask it to set the retention timeline to 30 days. And hopefully that gives us enough time to go back and see what happened. But then after that, we don't want that database growing in size. So we'll ask it to make that policy in. And it's creating a script to go and clean up those logs. And it's going to set a schedule for when to run that script. Great. So now our database won't blow up in size and take up all the space on our server. And we'll have useful logs to look into, but we need a way to actually surface that information visually. And we're going to do that by building a dashboard. But before we can build that dashboard, we need to build all the plumbing that goes between the data and the dashboard. So we're going to do that next with the backend. Now for here, we are going to switch to the coder, but the coder is going to help us build a lightweight Python server that we can then connect to and then visualize the information. Let's go into Discord and let's go to the coder's channel and let's provide him with this prompt, which tells the coder where all the data is, what kind of logs we want to see, and just gets him ready to actually build the plumbing. So coder reviewed all of those files and he says he's ready to build that backend. So let me go and give him the next prompt, which is really to build the backend server. I will say at this point, things are getting a little bit more complicated. You can see that it's planning 11 tasks for this one prompt. And so if you're still not using a powerful model, now would be an amazing time to switch to that. So it finished building out the server backend for the dashboard. Now we need to actually visualize it. But before we do, we're going to actually define a design system. And this is important because AI is really good at building things that you can be very specific about. If you can define things like colors, font styles, all of that early on, then it's going to have a much easier time down the road when it's making lots of little changes everywhere. Because I'm starting a new phase, I'll probably want to start a new session. So in Discord, you can just come in and type in /new, and that will give you an approval prompt and then start another fresh session. I'm going to take my design token prompt and send that to coder. Okay, what happened? Well, this prompt is really big. And Discord has a limit on the number of characters you can send, but you can also upload it as a file and then hit send, and that will still work. This prompt is really defining all of the colors for the brand, the borders, the actual colors that we're going to use for each of the agents, and font types, spacing, layouts, effects, all of that is done in a single prompt here. Okay, so coder went ahead and created that CSS file. Now we're going to build on that and build reusable building blocks like badges, like cards that we can use later on in the dashboard. So let me send that. And again, that's a really long prompt. It's going to ask me if I want to upload it as a file. That's not an issue. So it went ahead and created the components file. Now let's get it to build the actual skeleton. So now we're asking it to use that CSS and JavaScript file and that design system we built to build a shell with a layout, navigation, and really just a skeleton of the dashboard. This way also has the benefit of making it modular and extensible. So for example, if you want to change out one color, you just need to change out the design token, and that change will apply to all of the components. Okay, so it just got back to me and says all 3 files are in place. So now we should have the shell. So we're off to a good start. And so far we've built a lot of stuff, but we haven't actually seen it because, well, how do we actually access it, right? Let's see what coder recommends. It tells me that the server is running and we can access it using an SSH tunnel. It's also giving me the command to do that here. So I will copy this command and then paste in the command and then again, paste in your VPS IP address. And ask you for the password again, which can get annoying. There's a fix for that that will come to in a later section. Okay, so that command went through. Now I can try connecting to this address here. So let's go. And look at this. We have our Hermes logo up here. We have our different tabs. What I'm not seeing is any sort of placeholder or a stage component for where the actual dashboard widgets are going to go. I'm going to ask it to build that for me. Let's just check the status. And we can see that we are quite over our token budget. So we're going to start a new session. And I'm just going to describe the changes that I want. I'm going to ask to see if it can potentially animate some of this stuff for us as well. So let's refresh it. It created this placeholder where everything's going to live. And there's this nice animation here now when we switch tabs. Before we move on, I am just going to ask it to increase the text in the nav bar
just so that it's a little bit more prominent. Okay, so it says everything is 20 to 20% larger. This is a lot more visually accessible and easier to read. And again, you can kind of customize this to your own visual style. If you want the nav bar on the left, that's fine, just describe it and it'll make those changes for you. But it's nice to have this shell ready before we go ahead and start filling in all the blocks with the data. And lastly, I've included a post-audit loop here. After any major build stage like this, if you're seeing issues, you can run it with the original spec and it's going to do an audit and then give you a new prompt that you can use in a new session to fix those issues before you move on. So if you're following along, which I hope you are, then you can use this to iteratively fix any issues that come along in the process. And speaking of issues, now that we have this great looking dashboard shell, we don't want to have one change break everything. So in this next phase, we're going to introduce a backup protocol. So it's going to make a copy of the files before any change, and we can go back to the version if something breaks. Paste in the prompt. So everything's backed up and it's built. Great. So where are we so far? We set up our agent crew. We have a way to communicate with them through Discord and Telegram. And now we have the shell for the dashboard that lives on our VPS that we can access on our local machine. But this is still just a shell. How do we actually fill all of these tabs with meaningful data that will help you see exactly what's going on with your agent system and be able to manage, communicate, and use it more effectively?
All right, so we have our dashboard shell built. We have our backup protocol loaded. Now the fun part, we're going to populate these tabs with widgets that's going to give us insight into what's actually happening with our AgentOS. So let's start with the overview tab. This is where we're going to get an overview of how our server's doing, what agents are working on, what's happening right now. So I have a prompt for it, and I am going to send it to the coder. But again, we're going to start a new conversation. And I am on the pro model, so that's good. And paste it in, hit send, upload it as a file, and then send. And while it's doing that, I do want to show you that if I come back to my dashboard here, it's no longer working. That's because I took a break and it must have timed out. So you can just go back in your terminal, type that command again to get your tunnel set up, put in your password. And now if I come back and refresh my browser, it's back up and running. So it looks like it's just finishing up that build, and it built out the layout and the data flow, and it restarted the server for me as well. So let's go over to our dashboard tab. I'm just going to refresh it to see the latest changes. Okay, so what's here? Here we have a radar that shows which agent is active and when. We have our server metrics and the size of our database, and some metrics here that show how many messages have gone in and out, how many tokens we're using, and to make sure we're actually using the cache. We have the activity here that all of the agents have done and logged, and I can see that the integrity here is low. And that's because we had a few different errors here as we were building the dashboard. So I'm okay with that. So our overview tab is now up and running. It is responsive, so it changes with the window size, and all of our stats seem to be populated here. Now, this isn't perfect yet. There's supposed to be a graph here that shows you the throughput. I can see my CPU usage isn't being updated here. So that's okay. We're going to fix all of that. But before we go in and manually fix it, I'm going to use that post-audit loop I showed you. So we're going to copy the post-audit loop. I'm going to start a new session. And in this loop, we're going to say audit the overview tab build against the original prompt spec. And then we're going to paste the original prompt back in here. So let's go copy it and paste it. Upload as a file. And this gives it enough context to go back and check the work to make sure everything was done correctly. And if there is something missing, it's going to figure out what that is. And it's going to give us a new prompt that we can copy paste and fix the build. So it finished that audit and it found 3 bugs, which some of them were intentional just to show you what's happening here. So for example, we can already see here that the orchestrator and the coder have the same color. That's because if we go back in the design tokens here, we can see we define those as the same color. That's the benefit of using design tokens, right? Because now we can make this change in one location and it's going to populate everywhere else. And the cool thing is it actually went found a couple of issues in the spec itself,
which is great because then I can go here and fix the actual prompt so that when you guys come on here, it's already the latest version.
Okay, let's see what else it found. There's some wrong components. VPS progress bars are in line. Okay, so it gave us all of that, and it gave us a prompt that we can actually now copy paste into a new session. So I'm just going to start a new session again and paste all of those prompts in. And this is going to instruct it to fix that overview tab along with all of those changes. Also, this is partially because I am using DeepSeek Pro, which is not as good as Claude or ChatGPT 5.5. So if you're using one of those models, you're probably not going to run into these kinds of issues. Okay, so it's done with those fixes. And here, this is so cool. It actually even gave me a screenshot of the dashboard that's fixed. And now if I refresh my page, I can see that my context area here is loading correctly. My CPU stats are loading, but I still don't see a spark line. We have this eyebrow element here, but it's not really adding much to the page, so I'm going to ask it to remove this as well. Okay, so it's made all those fixes now, and if I refresh my page for the spark line, I can see there's a data mismatch here. So I just want to make sure it's using the latest logs. So what I did was I went back to my orchestrator and I said, hey, I set up a task to give you some logging, but it doesn't seem to be working correctly. Can you take a look and fix it? And it is now going back, and it did find some bugs with it not recording it correctly, and it fixed all of that for me. So I can see now that my agents are now logging all of those activities correctly. My agent calls and response numbers are going up. Now let's go back in and fix this throughput indicator. Okay, so it fixed all of those issues. It's saying that the spark line should now populate. So let's go back and refresh. And yeah, all of my numbers now match. We're all good. Great. So we have our overview tab. It gives us a status of what's actually going on with the system, which agents are active, our server stats, and the most recent activity. But we still don't have a lot of insight into what each agent is doing. And that's where we're going to build out the agents tab. So I'm going to copy the agents tab prompt and I'll paste that in. This will give us a lot more insight into what each of those agents are doing. And if we have failures, it's going to tell us where to investigate. So it finished building that and it already gave me a screenshot of what that looks like. So let's go ahead and refresh our page here. And then let's see if that worked. And it didn't. Nope. I can see what it did. It actually built a new crew tab. So there we go, which is great. And it has all of the information here. So I actually like the crew tab. So I'm just going to tell it to replace the crew tab with the agents tab. And we're going to also build out the statistics for all of the agents. Do a new session again. So now I've told it that, hey, we were building the agents tab, but you built out the crew tab. That's cool. I like it. Keep it. But then also build out the statistics. Okay, so it finished that and it gave me a new screenshot and I can see that it moved the crew tab over. So let's refresh it and go to the crew tab. And great, now I can see my tasks, how many succeeded, who was the most active. For each agent, it gives me the responses, success rate, what models they're using, as well as a detailed log here that I can click through and see what each of them are doing. Now, I did get it to feed it some dummy data for populating the spark line. So that's why my stats aren't representative, but you get the picture. For you, it might take a little bit of time before this actually populates. Now, I am seeing some issues here with regards to these 7-day stat bars not populating. So we're going to do the post-build audit loop one more time. Start a new session and give it the prompts again. And we're just adding a note that we're now calling this crew, and that's okay. So let's hit send, upload as file, send, and let's see what it comes back with. Okay, so it ran that audit and it found 2 bugs. So I'm going to copy paste that back in and ask it to fix that. in a new session. The cool thing about this one is it actually did pick up that those agent bars were empty and I didn't have to describe it. So that's why I like the post-audit loop, because it describes the issue in a better way than I personally could. Okay, and it's done. So let's go back, refresh, and check out the crew tab. And yep, here we can see that the bars are now populating and the log is now the full log as opposed to just a shorter version of the log. Now I can see that the success rate for coder is low. And if I come into the coder, you can see that we had a few errors here when we were building out the deployment pipelines. So if there's any errors, we can kind of dig in and figure out where they are. And the other issue here is whenever I do look at the details, it switches back to the Alt tab within a couple of seconds. And this number here, because it hasn't changed. So that tells me that it's not logging correctly or not pulling from the right sources. So we're going to ask it to look into that and fix it. Okay, so it fixed that issue. And now if I come and refresh and try this out, see if it automatically switches back, and it doesn't. And my tasks totals are now updating correctly. Great, so our crew tab is all up and ready. Let's look at the next stage, which is the tasks and schedule tab. So this is really great because here we're going to get our own tasks tab that we can use in a Kanban layout to track what's happening. So let's start a new session again and ask it to build out the tasks tab. So it's finished building out the tasks tab. Let's go and take a look. And of course, we need to refresh. And great. We have our own little Kanban board here, and we can move tasks, we can delete tasks, and I can add new tasks here and give it a priority. Let's try that out. Great, so this lets me organize my work. Now let's look at the schedule tab. Now this is important because Hermes develops a set of cron jobs in the system that it can do. And so having a place to be able to look at all of those scheduled tasks just gives us a sense of what's happening automatically. So go ahead and copy that over and paste that in. And this is going to be a read-only tab just because we want to let the agent manage all the scheduled tasks. Okay, and I ran out of tokens. I topped that up just to make sure it doesn't run out of funds. And it says that the schedule tab is built out and live. So let's go take a look. And if I refresh, come back, boom, I have my Hermes jobs and then all of my system jobs available here. I just can't see the text in the badge. So I'm going to ask it to just make that fix for me. Now, if you're having trouble and you want to be really specific, you can always inspect the element and you can see that the class is badge. So you can always give it the exact specifics as well. Okay, so it says it's fixed. And I'm going to refresh again, go to the schedule, and yep, I can now actually read the text. So schedule tab's done. And lastly, we're going to build out a place for all of these agents to store their documents so that we can actually go in, read them, read the deliverables, copy paste the outputs, edit them, all of that. So that's going to be our content tab. We're going to build out both the tab as well as instructions for the agents to be able to read and write to that tab. So let's build out the tab first in a new session, of course. And it's saying that the content tab is complete. So let's go back, and here is our last tab. So this is where we can see what every agent is doing and outputting, and it built in some sample content here for me as well. So this is great. Now we need to tell every agent to be able to use this. So we're going to send this to all of our agents as instructions to always save their outputs in the content tab. So let's start with the orchestrator on Telegram. And then I'm also going to send this in a new session to coder, to the marketer, to the writer, and to the analyst. And the orchestrator created all of that for me. The coder is saying that the content protocol is locked in. And all of my agents are confirming that they will now use this new content tab to actually save all of their work. And we can come in here now and we can actually see what they published. We can edit it and we can make any changes that we want. And that will now all save on the server. So any work that our agents will do, we can now access it, see it, edit it, and have good visibility into the output that's being produced. So this is great. And let's check how many tokens that took. So I am at $1.66. So it took roughly $2 to build that whole thing, which is amazing. This is what we've built so far. We have our VPS, we have the Hermes AgentOS, we can talk to them. And then we have a dashboard now built that lives on the VPS, but we can tunnel in and connect to that dashboard. But there's a couple of issues here, right? One, we're still using passwords to log into our dashboards. And two, we have to manually open terminal and run that tunnel every time to be able to see that dashboard. So instead, we're going to make some updates that let us fix those two issues. First, we're going to start using SSH keys to start logging into that dashboard, which will solve that issue of typing in that password every time. So first, go back into your terminal. And here you can see that I'm actually logged into my server. So I'm going to exit out of that. And if I hit Control-C, that's going to close that connection. And then on my machine, I want to see if I already have any keys. So if I copy paste this command, it's going to tell me that I actually do already have a key like that exists. If you don't have the key, you can copy paste this second command and it's going to generate that key for you. Next, we need to actually copy paste that key to our VPS. So let's go ahead and copy this command. And we need to give it our VPS address. So let's type that in. Type in that password. It added that in. So now we can just type in SSH root and that should work. Great. So this time it did not need a password typed in because it has a public key and we have a private key saved. And if you're on Windows, I have commands for Windows provided here as well, so you can follow along for the Windows version. So we're logged in, no more passwords, but you still have to open the terminal. So instead, let's create a launcher on your desktop by copying this command, go back to the terminal, and I'm still on my VPS here, so let me hit exit. And then I'm going to copy paste this command in. And essentially, this is going to create a new file that lets me log in to my server. Replace your IP address here. And then paste in your actual IP address and hit enter. And now if I look at my desktop folder, I can see that it created a new command file here. I still have to make it executable. So I'm just going to go back into my terminal and then paste that in. And now I should be able to run this. So let's try it. Okay, so it ran that command and it opened up the dashboard for me in a new tab automatically. And if I close out of my terminal here, I can still access my dashboard. And if you're on Windows, here's some commands for you as well that you can execute to create the same shortcut. Great, so we have the shortcut to open our dashboard quickly, but we still can't access it from our phone. And it's still a manual step that you need to run every time. So if you want to get around that, the way to do that is to use Tailscale. Tailscale creates a private mesh network for all of your devices, so you can have it running on your phone, your laptop, your VPS, and they can all talk to each other. And the good thing about this is you don't have to do any port forwarding, no tunnels, and it's going to survive, sleep, wake, all of those things. So let's get it to set that up. We're going to go into our coder and tell it to set up Tailscale on the VPS. So let's copy that. And then I just created a new session and we'll paste that in. And it's going to install Tailscale. And Tailscale does require you to create an account and authenticate. So you can just do that on their own website here to get started and create an account. But I already have an account, so I'm going to use that. So it installed Tailscale. And it did give me the URL that I can use to log in. If I open that Tailscale URL and I'm just going to sign in, and it tells me that I'm going to connect this device, which is really the Linux server that we set up. So let me connect it, and login successful. So Tailscale set up on my server. I asked for the IP address to let me connect it, and it gave me the IP address and port number, and it found an issue with the port that it was bound on, and it went ahead and fixed it. So if you can't access it, just ask Hermes Agent to bind it to the right local host. And so now if I look at my IP address here and connect it using Tailscale, that works. Let me just try that using my phone as well. I installed Tailscale on my phone and it's connected to the same network. So now if I type that same IP address in and hit go, you can see that the same dashboard pops up on my phone as well. Can look at all of those other details here as well. So now we've added a Tailscale node here that we can connect to both on our laptop, our phone, and then access the dashboard that way. Just a quick reminder of some of the things that we looked at. Make sure when you're starting off to not use Hermes profiles. That will complicate the build, and you'll hit into issues where Hermes can't actually change profiles during runtime. If the dashboard breaks, you can always use that backup protocol to restore to any snapshots. The tunnel might crash every now and then, and the way to get around that is to just restart that tunnel using the terminal or set up Tailscale like we just did. Iterative bug fixes, we saw this where sometimes it builds up 90% of the things, but there's some issues here and there. And to do that, you can use the post-build audit loop, and it'll look at the original spec, find where the issue is, and give you a prompt that you can start a new session with to fix those issues. I did use this using DeepSeek, which isn't the best model out there, admittedly. This will go much faster if you use GPT 5.4, 5.5, Claude Opus, any of the other frontier models. If you don't have access to those models, you can still use the same thing, just break the prompts down into smaller steps so that it can build in increments. And then lastly, if your Discord bot doesn't work, just make sure you have those permissions, make sure you have developer view enabled. And when we do that first wiring, go into each of those channels to make sure that the agents have access to their individual channels. And last but not the least, if you come onto the guide here, I do have a dashboard template available for download that you can use as a reference or provide to your agent to use as a template. And yes, it's all free. You can come in here and get all the prompts, the templates, the commands, everything that you need to actually build this and succeed at it. If you are able to support with a coffee, that's great. But if you do need help setting up any of this, then you can book a one-on-one session. I hope you were able to build this. We built an entire AgentOS and a mission control dashboard. We built a 5-agent crew that you can build and customize to your own needs. Thanks for watching. I hope you built something cool, and I'll see you in the next one. Also, that's probably should change that.